Hello, people of the internet. This is a Geek Gaming Culture channel. This is JD speaking, and we're going to go a little bit more in depth about one particular aspect of Hellena Taylor's now infamous rant and the 3-video long speech that she made about the pay that she was receiving in Bayonetta 3 and why she decided to step down from the role. Now, there's a lot of things that we need to talk about before we get into the big news story, the big change that I have, because first things first, there seems to be a bit of hatred being levied at Jennifer Hale right now. The idea that perhaps she's being what's called a scab or a strikebreaker. I don't know if that's the case. I don't think it is. I don't know what's going on there, but it seems as though there seems to be some kind of war that's starting to rage between the two fan bases, Hellena Taylor's side and Jennifer Hale's side. Why there are sides, I have no idea, but it's kind of getting a little bit scary because we don't know exactly what this might lead to. So I want to specify this. Whatever happens, please do not harass anybody. Please do not go after anybody. Not something that deserves this sort of mentality. If this was something like Activision Blizzard, again, we go back to that. This is a financial situation. This has nothing to do with like what happened with Activision Blizzard. Neither Hellena Taylor nor Jennifer Hale are accusing Platinum Games of sexually assaulting them, harassing them in that manner. This is something a little different than that, so it doesn't deserve the same ire, something like that. And don't harass, don't send anybody death threats, as I believe I've seen some people do for Jennifer Hale. They've been sending her some really nasty messages. Don't do that. Regardless of your feelings about this, do not do that. That is not okay. And I am saying that because it's obviously Hellena Taylor is strangely not saying that at all. For some weird reason, she's actually for the most part been silent since coming out with those videos, and I don't know why she's not following up in any sort of way. That in and of itself is kind of strange. You would think that she would be able to answer any kind of questions that someone may have about this, but strangely enough, it is just outside of a random tweet after that, just radio silence since then. So yeah, I count that as a strange, which also calls into question whether or not she was just emotional and her swipe at Jennifer Hale was just something that was emotionally charged and not something she actually believed. But now I'm suspecting maybe she actually does believe that Jennifer Hale undercutted her in a way. That's why maybe she should do a follow-up, and maybe she should answer these questions, and maybe she should say whether or not she wants to walk that back or not, because now I have a feeling maybe she meant what she said there. Maybe she meant that swipe. Maybe it wasn't just emotionally charged, and maybe she really does have a problem with Jennifer Hale, and I don't believe it was just emotionally charged. I'm starting to believe there is some genuine animosity there that Hellena Taylor has with Jennifer Hale specifically, and that's unfortunate because I don't want to see a feud between these two. I don't want to see that, but unfortunately maybe there's something that we have to start questioning alongside everything else I'm about to say. Now, I was going to question the stuff about Hellena Taylor and the 4K offer she was given at the start of it. I was ready to post, I was ready to publish the video, I was ready to do the post-production of the video, and then this story came out today. Now, yes, I know who wrote this story. Yes, I know people know how I feel about this particular person, Jason Schreier. If he can just say that he didn't know and he didn't intend to sit on this story for his own benefit, then maybe, just maybe, okay. But, yeah, that whole thing with Activision Blizzard, man, it is just so awful. However, that having been said, I am willing to give credit where credit is due and where it is deserved. And here's the other thing. VGC, Video Game Chronicles, have now corroborated this with their own statement, their own sources. So this is now corroborated. What is this about? Well, let's give you the TLDR from the man himself. Platinum offered Hellena Taylor between 3K and 4K per session for at least 5 sessions, according to 2 people familiar with the deal and documentation viewed by Bloomberg. In response, the people said Taylor asked for a 6-figure fee and residuals. Negotiations fell apart. Taylor denies this account, of course she would. In an email to Bloomberg, she called that version of events an absolute lie and said that Platinum is trying to save their ass and the game. Now, keep in mind who's reporting this, and initially, I'm pretty sure people want to say, you know what, this is the same guy who sat on the Activision Blizzard thing, and because of that, we shouldn't give him any kind of credit or any kind of thing that shows that we believe what he's saying. Fair enough. However, that would have been even a slightest bit true if it wasn't for the notion that we also have this story coming from VGC. Sources dispute Bayonetta voice actor claims overpay offer. And I'm going to just go down to the relevant part here. Sources cited in a Bloomberg report have now disputed some of the claims made by the voice actor, many of which VGC can corroborate via our own sources. According to people with knowledge of the situation as well as documentation reviewed by both Bloomberg and VGC, Platinum intended to rehire Taylor last summer. It's claimed that Platinum sought to hire Taylor for at least 5 sections. VGC sources suggested it could have been as few as 4, with each paying $3,000 to $4,000 for 4 hours in the studio. This would have brought Taylor's total fee to $15,000, which is probably where whoever made that one tweet we showed you earlier, got that figure from. This is probably where they got it. Bloomberg reports that VGC can corroborate via our own sources. One person with knowledge of the deal claimed to VGC this represented a significant increase in Taylor's fee for the second game. According to Bloomberg, the voice actor responded by asking for a 6-figure sum as well as the residuals on the game, a claim Taylor strongly denies. I will admit I have no idea what the residual is. Somebody can probably inform me what that is. VGC sources echoed the residuals claims but did not mention a requested sum. In private messages exchanged with VGC, which says that yes, they have tried to reach out to her as well, Taylor called the suggestion that she was offered more than $4,000 categorically untrue. She later responded to claims by sources she could have earned $15,000 an absolute lie and a complete joke. I quite like to put this in the review mirror, I'm not sure what that is, and leave the whole bloody franchise behind, she told VGC, so I think I'll just let my video stand. I spoke the truth. No, you did not. No, you did not. Says a whole lot when you're saying, hey, I'm just gonna go put this in the rearview mirror and not answer to any of these claims because you are a freaking liar. Because here's the deal. This is what I was going to say right from the very start before these articles came about, and this proves my point. We blindly believed Taylor. We blindly believed her. We did not check any of this. We did not say, would you please come out with the receipts? We heard her story and then we blindly believed her. There was no reason we should have done that. There was no reason at all. Especially if we're going to hold a particular side to one standard and then turn around and do a double standard for the other person. If we're going to ask for Platinum Games to give us some kind of proof, we gotta do the same with her. And it's because they're all human beings at the end of the day. And wouldn't you believe it, there are people who are still trying to find a path in order to say that Hellena Taylor was in the right and that she was telling the truth, that she was still having her stands. And she's still standing by her story, even after all of this. And I have to ask people who are still doubting this whole thing that maybe she is not in the right, that she is the one that is in the wrong here. What else do you need to hear? You have 2 sources who are saying that she was lying to you about what she was supposed to have gotten or what they offered her. You're going to have the stuff that I am about to talk to you about, since that's still coming. You have these red flags. You have her saying earlier on that it was in and out as quickly as you possibly could. You have all these red flags. You have Jennifer Hale coming out in a classy way. And yes, it was classy. Yes, it had everything to do with her trying to say what she needed to say in as polite of a way as possible without breaking NDA. You have all of this. You have Platinum Games coming out at the early going saying it was overlapping issues. And still, the only thing that you're going to believe is her testimony that has absolutely no receipts, that all you have is her word, a word that has been falling apart. What else do you need to hear in order to believe that she might be lying? What else do you have to hear to determine that maybe Platinum Games might be telling the truth? No, they're not perfect. No, we're not saying that Nintendo's in the right. No, we're not saying that the CEO of Platinum Games is acting like he should. No one's saying that. And no one's saying that voice actors should be compensated to the amount that they deserve to be compensated for their work. But for somebody to just say, hey, this is what happened to me, and we're supposed to just blindly believe it without any sort of questions, and to make Platinum Games have to basically expose Fort Knox to us in order to have them be believable, and even that is a stretch to see if we would believe them even if they did that. Do you understand for a moment just how much of a double standard this is? Can we please just acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, that the person that's in the fault, the person who's at fault here is Hellena Taylor and not Platinum Games? Capitalism is not bad all the freaking time. It is most of the time. But in this particular case, Hellena Taylor, assuming this is to be right, we have every reason to believe it is a liar and a scam artist. And it pains me to say this because she is a good voice actress. She has no reason to want to do this. Why would she want to do this and ruin her reputation like this? I don't understand it. And to stand by this and to just say, hey, you know what? I was mistaken. I was mistaken about what had actually occurred. Or this is what happened. Or good luck to the people who are going to be in this new game. But instead, she's taking the low road at every opportunity, holding on to this story, and then saying, I want the franchise behind me, as if she no longer cares about the franchise. So much for being the voice of Bayonetta. If that's how you're going to behave when somebody calls you out on your BS, what the heck? What is it going to take to realize that maybe, just maybe, Platinum Games is correct on this one? Maybe Nintendo doesn't deserve this. Maybe Jennifer Hale doesn't deserve this. Maybe she's not this scab that you claim of her to be, since what do you expect her to do? What else is it going to take? What else do you need to hear in order to believe that Platinum Games is in the right on this one? Doesn't mean that we switch sides and light big corporate people. That's not what this is. This is standing up for integrity. And if somebody is in the right at one point, it raises credibility when we say that in this one instance, just this one instance, it doesn't mean anything else like it is necessarily the same way, but in this one instance, we got it wrong. That Hellena Taylor is wrong here, and she was given every opportunity to come back at a reasonable structure. Now, you may think it's still just a drop of the bucket because of the other thing that she said at the very beginning. Well, that leads to the second half of all this, because there is one other thing that we need to discuss. And the reason why I'm saying, what else do you have to hear to believe, maybe you need to hear this, is because of the main thing where I feel as though her story does start really falling apart. And you want to know where that is? You want to know what I'm talking about here? It's because of the very first paragraph in Hellena Taylor's statement. The very first thing she says. It's mentioning that the Bayonetta franchise made approximately $450 million. That's not including merchandise. Now, I had overlooked it, and I admit I never caught this. There's a lot of people who overlooked it. There's a lot of people who just glanced right by it and never stopped to think about what she just said, because we were so fixated on the emotion and what she was talking about. Now remember, she's a voice actress. She is paid to act. How much do you want to bet that she knew exactly what buttons to press? What exactly she had to do to get you to believe her, which is crying, to be emotionally distraught. She's paid in order to make you believe that whatever she's voicing or whatever she's doing is believable for that character. So take that into account as you look very closely at this figure. $450 million, not including merchandise for the entirety of the franchise. And this is the thing that Angry Joe and Jim Sterling both decided to use as the basis for their argument. $450 million that they could only afford to give her 4K. Assuming, again, that's the accurate amount that we're going with. Because Because as I said before, how do we know she's not lying about that? Because we just decided to believe her and not really check and make sure that that was accurate, that her story is accurate. And we all overlooked this. And it took me to talking with somebody on another Discord server in order for me to realize, wait a minute, something doesn't seem right. Here's my first question I want to ask to this. How would she know that's how much that franchise made? Who's given her that information? Because I don't think she would get that information from Platinum Games themselves. I don't think she would get that information from any inside source. She would have to go to somewhere, Media Create or VG Charts, as unreliable as that might be, in order to get this information. So how would she know this? That's my first question. And the other question is, how would they be able to make $450 million for this franchise? I am not saying that Bayonetta is a small franchise or has not made any money by any stretch of imagination. It obviously has, because it's getting sequels. And it's obviously a sleeper hit. However, that having been said, let's go and really look at the sales figures for Bayonetta for the entirety of the franchise. Now, if you remember the situation that came up when Bayonetta first came out, Sega decided to say that it was a failure. They didn't want to publish the game, so Platinum Games had to go for a publisher. Nintendo decided to publish the game for Bayonetta 2. Without Nintendo, Bayonetta 2 would not have a publisher, and that's why it's become exclusive for Nintendo. Platinum Games basically became a second-party developer for Nintendo. According to Nintendo Life, who is getting their source from Nintendo Media Center, and keep in mind, some of these sales figures can vary a little bit depending on the source that you're going by, whether it's from Mitsu, whether it's VG Charts, whether it be Media Create or Nintendo's internal sales figures and their data. It seems as though altogether they had amassed, as of April 2018, 700k units. And the second game had recently surpassed the 1 million unit mark. Now, we can safely suspect it is $60 for each unit, because Nintendo refuses to do any kind of greatest hits line or platinum hits line like what Sony and Microsoft does in order to give you good games at a reduced rate. Nintendo never really does that, and I don't understand why they don't do that. I don't know why they don't, but in any event, think about if it is $60, which is the going rate, and you multiply 1 million units by 60 for $60 for each game, it's going to come out to $60 million. Far, far below the $450 million that Hellena Taylor is claiming the game and the franchise was making. And remember, the first game came out on several systems, and Sega thought that was a failure. Failure enough to relinquish any desire to publish any future games from that franchise. Now, is she trying to add the Super Smash Bros. Stuff into this figure? That's sort of a huge exaggeration, because that's not considered a Bayonetta game. That's considered a Super Smash Bros. Game. She can't include that into this figure. And yes, I'm saying that because I know some people want to try to say, oh, well, she's including Super Smash Bros. Into this. She can't do that. That's just simply a exaggeration of what is considered a Bayonetta game. That's just Super Smash Bros. Using the character in order to sell their game. And Super Smash Bros. Ultimate has sold a tremendous amount of units, 28 point whatever it is million units. That's a lot of units that was sold for that game. Can you really call that a Bayonetta game? And I'm assuming now that that's probably what she's trying to add in. That's what she's trying to add in here, and that doesn't make sense. Talking about the main franchise here. 1, 2 on the Switch. Maybe the compilation. That franchise. The actual franchise, and not talking about the Super Smash Bros. Thing, which she can't include here because it's not an actual Bayonetta game, and you factor that in, and that doesn't even come close to the $450 million price mark that she's saying. You would have to put it in the merchandise, you would have to do that, and even then, it doesn't seem like it would come up to the number that she's trying to say it comes up to. Keep in mind, the figures that I gave you and I figured out, that's before you factor in the developmental costs. That's before you factor in how much you are going to pay everybody who had worked on the game. That is before you factor in what they have to do and create other games, the engines and the equipment, and paying off the middleman and how much the publisher would get. Those all factor in, and after you factor in all of that and you take away the money that you need in order to pay for the game being made, it's even less. Now, I'm not sure what the developmental cost would be in that sense, or how much money you would have to. I'm not an expert on that front, but I have to think that a game is going to cost you a good penny in order to make. You gotta think, how many units would you need to sell in order to break even on a investment like that? Basically put, Hellena Taylor could be an outright liar. This doesn't make sense. $450 million, where is she getting that from? Is she getting it from the main franchise? Is she getting it from some figures that she was told? Is she trying to factor in this SSB stuff, which doesn't make sense? That's why you ask questions. You don't just take someone's word for it. Just like you don't take Platinum Games' word for it. We weren't doing that. But the more that we're looking at the story, the more we're looking at this statement and not just falling for the emotional input that we're getting, and we actually step back and look and say, okay, what did she actually say? What is she actually saying here? Does this make any sense? The more her story starts falling apart more and more and more, and this is the worst thing yet. And you have to excuse some people for not catching this right away, because when you're talking about the video game industry being a multi-million-dollar industry, you tend to not really think of this as much because it seems believable, because the video game industry is making a lot of money. So who would dare question that? Made probably $450 million. Look at some of the biggest franchises ever: Call of Duty, Legend of Zelda, Super Mario, God of War. That makes a ton of money. The Madden franchise makes a ton of money. I don't understand why, because those games suck anymore, but you get the picture here. Those games make a ton of money, so it's believable that a franchise could make a lot of money. So what happens when somebody just comes out and says this and we never question it? We have to be excused that maybe we missed something here. We missed something that was easily refutable and could easily be challenged, and that's what you gotta do. If you want to prove that something can hold up, you have to challenge it. Don't take someone's word for it just because you don't like the company that they're advocating against. And yes, Nintendo has been in the crosshairs recently for some people who are not exactly liking some of the other things that Nintendo has done. And I don't care what Hellena's politics are, and I have seen that some people are attacking her for that. Don't do that either. Don't get me started on that stuff. So many people were so quick to say, let's boycott the game. Let's say we're not going to buy the game. And let's go and attack the person that's replacing Hellena Taylor for whatever reason. And let's find whatever excuse we can in order to push back against whoever is trying to give voice to reason. And let's try to get a proverbial bloody feud going between two voice actresses. That doesn't make any bit of sense to me. Why do you want that? Why do you want to see a feud between Hellena Taylor and Jennifer Hale? I don't understand why people want to see that. Why people are trying to advocate any way they can in order to say that Hellena Taylor is completely in the right and that somehow Jennifer Hale tried to intentionally undercut her. Why are we saying that that happened? Why are we saying that Jennifer Hale is just doing PR? Why are we doing this? Why is this a thing? Why can't we just say, hey, Hellena, you have to say the entire truth here. What actually happened? Don't come at us with some BS figures. Don't just come at us with some things that you pulled out of thin air. Actually tell us the truth. Your IMDb doesn't hold up to what you're trying to say that you are entitled to. Was it 4K that they gave you? Show us the proof. If you're saying that you don't care about NDA, then show us everything. Why do you feel the need to not tell us important information that we need in order to take your side? Maybe because we would take your side anyway, because I have no idea why we just blindly believe Hellena Taylor, but we question Platinum Games on every single last little thing they try to say to defend themselves. themselves. Maybe because Kamiya doesn't know how to handle himself on Twitter. That has nothing to do with the rest of Platinum Games. There are good working people at that company that is trying to make a good game, and you're punishing them because you're blindly believing somebody without getting any kind of receipt whatsoever. And if anybody tries to tell you maybe you need a receipt, maybe you need to take a step back and actually look at what she's saying and say, wait a minute, there might be some red flags here. Calling them Nintendo fanboys, you're calling them scabs, calling them whatever you have to in order to believe somebody, because you need a reason to be mad that day. You need a reason to be outraged that day. You need for some reason to confirm your bias against a video game company. And again, no one is saying Nintendo's absolved of any fault, and neither are they doing that with Platinum Games. No one's doing that, so let's stop trying to say that they're doing that just because they're asking you to take a step back and ask for due process and ask for the receipts here and challenge it. You're gonna hold Platinum Games to that kind of scrutiny. You have to do the same with Hellena Taylor. You have to do the same, and you can't let emotions get in the way of you being able to think critically. And we also factor in what we found out today about the payout not being what she said it was, and we have no reason to not believe these stories, especially when they were cited by two separate sources, when they're corroborated by two separate sources. It seems to be that this is a narrative that's falling apart, and those people who are still believing her after all of this needs to really take a deep dive into themselves and wonder why they're doing this, because I am assuring you that it is not because you want industry to thrive. It is basically because you are looking for confirmation bias because you don't like any of these two companies, or you're really trying to absolve somebody who you consider needs protecting just because of maybe their gender or maybe their background. They need protecting regardless of whether or not they are lying to you or not. You had to find a way, you had to find an excuse as to why they're not. And if you really need to dig deep down in order to find that excuse, then is it worth defending that person? Especially if they're going to say what they said when they got challenged. It is a freaking shame that somebody is resorting to this kind of thing when they were so beloved at the very start of it, and they were willing to be on her side, and she took firm advantage of that by lying to them. They do not deserve that. Fans of Bayonetta do not deserve that. And the people who were on your side, Hellena, do not deserve that. Those who would side with you on the political front do not deserve that either. They felt like they were betrayed as well because they believed you and they wanted to believe you, and you were one of the few people that were saying something that should be said and saying something that needs to be addressed in the video game industry. But fortunately, you instead took advantage of it and you lied to us while taking swipes at someone who didn't deserve it. And this transcends politics. This transcends any kind of political affiliation you're in, right or left wing, doesn't matter. She made it harder for those people who need someone on their side when they're asking for better compensation, for fair compensation. That's what she's done. She's damaged the ability of other people to be able to ask for better compensation because of what she did, when all she had to do was just be honest with us, to just be a little bit more humble, to just be a little bit more forthcoming with all the information that was going on, because we wanted to be on her side. And she took advantage of our trust and our sympathy. She took advantage of it. This still is fixable. It is still fixable. All she has to do is to come clean and to just say, hey, I was wrong. If she's not willing to do that, and it seems like she's not willing to do that, and she's just doubling and tripling down, and as long as people who are trying to defend her keep defending her and keep producing excuses for her when they can just say, hey, come clean with these people, if she can't find it to do that and maybe to apologize to Jennifer Hale at this point, then maybe she deserved to take a step back. Maybe she deserved to lose that spot. Maybe Platinum Games was way too kind of her to even give her an opportunity to get the job back. I'm sorry, but that's just how it has to be. She's sorely damaged her reputation. It's going to be way hard for her now to get a job, not only because she broke NDAs willingly, but she flat out lied about what happened, and it's going to be very hard for her to get a job now because she's going to be a liability now. And it's going to be way harder for those people who need fair compensation to be able to get it, because now we have the doubt. Thanks very little, Hellena Taylor. You're welcome even less. This is Geek Gaming Culture Channel, and it just happened.